Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 46th District Virtual Town Hall. Tonight, you'll hear directly from your state lawmakers, Senator David Frockt, Representative Gerry Pollet, and Representative Javier Valdez. And at this event, we're talking about the upcoming legislative session, which begins on January 10, Monday. And many of the questions we've been hearing about were submitted in advance through our survey. If you're tuning in right now to this live virtual town hall, you can also post questions in the comment section, and a staff member will get your question to the lawmakers. To get us started, I'd like to turn this over to your local lawmakers for brief opening remarks. Senator, can you start us off?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Guy. I appreciate that. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in to the town hall. We're obviously, given the COVID situation, we're still doing the virtual town halls. We really appreciate it. We had hoped, I think I said last year at this time, I hoped that when we did the pre-session town hall in 2022, we'd all be together again. Obviously, we're not there at this point, and I'm sure we'll have some questions about that as we go forward. I just want to take a quick minute and just say one thing, and that is I want to thank you. This is the 12th pre-session town hall I've had the honor and privilege to do as one of your state representatives and now state senator for the last 11 years. And this will be the last one I do as your state senator, because I'm not going to be seeking a fourth term in the state Senate coming up. And I just want to start off, I think, rather than talk about issues and things that we'll get into as the night goes on, just to let you know how much I appreciate the chance to have served you and served this community. I'll be in for the next short session of the legislature and through the end of the year. But the main thing I just want to convey is that these forums have always been so helpful to me so that I can know what's on your mind as we go into our lawmaking process. And I just want to thank you for your engagement, for your interest, and for your civic activism, which just a matter of participating in this alone is so much more than many people do. And I really appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you. I guess I'll turn it over to Representative Gerry Pollet.
Thank you very much, Senator Frockt. Welcome to all our residents, constituents of the 46th District for joining us this evening. The three of us have been extremely busy getting ready for the short session at 60 days that begins just around the corner on Monday. And every day it seems that the plans for the session changed. I know I was one of the people who had volunteered to be in person a few days a week of the session, and that won't be happening. We will be remote. And the beauty of being remote, though, is that last year we learned that it is possible for the legislative process to be opened up to thousands of constituents who have something to say about important legislation to them and appear at hearings without going back and forth to Olympia, which can take you hours and hours for 2 minutes of testimony. So I encourage you to sign up to testify on the bills that you care about. Go to the legislative homepage and look at the bills that you're interested in, see when there's a hearing, and sign up and join us. Be part of the discussion. And we look forward to having you do that. As part of my commitment to be accessible to you, although I won't be doing them in person, I will be holding Saturday morning drop-in discussions, 9:30 to 11 on Zoom, to talk to people who want to talk to your representative about issues. My priorities for this session start, of course, with COVID. As many of you know, I teach in the School of Public Health at the UW, and we can't do anything without talking about what we're going to be doing about COVID, and especially about keeping our children safe and healthy and in school, along with their educators being safe and healthy. And towards that end, I'll be introducing legislation to greatly increase the number of school nurses that the state pays for, which is a long-term issue, as well as making sure that the state provides funding for the testing and vaccination of our children and our educators. Those are just a couple of the things that I'll be working on, as well as climate change legislation as chair of the local government committee, making sure that our local governments plan for and take action from transportation to housing on climate change. And I know we'll be talking about how we work to make the entire tax system more fair in the state from your questions. So I look forward to answering that and many other questions. Representative Valdez, chair of the state government committee, please jump in now.
Thank you, Representative Pollet, and good evening to all of you tonight. First, I want to say good evening to those folks who may be here from Kenmore or Lake Forest Park. We, I think, have been really proud in the 46th district to represent you over these last 10 years. And I think, as many of you know, with the redistricting boundaries that came out, we are really sad to lose you. But please know that we will still continue to fight and work for you, and certainly, I think, on behalf of all three of us, to stay committed to ensuring that we do our best, to fulfill our obligations that we have worked with you on, and all those projects that we have supported you on. So it's been a wonderful 10 years, I think, for the 46 to have the cities of Lake Forest Park and Kenmore. And for those folks who may be joining the 46th, which are going to be folks from 45th Northeast 45th Street up, such as an Upper Wallingford and the Upper U District, and our Roosevelt and Ravenna neighbors, welcome to the 46th District, and please know we are here to serve you. Again, it's great to be here tonight. As Representative Pollet mentioned, I am the current chair of the State Government Committee. Last year was my very first year. And part of that has to do, of course, is working, of course, with our election systems. And a couple of things that I'm going to highlight today here is that a couple of things that I'm working on. I'm working on a bill right now, which is a priority. I'm working with our Secretary of State's office to protect your privacy, and that we're seeing a huge influx of requests from outside organizations and interest groups wanting to see everyone's signature, or email, or phone number. But I'm working with Secretary of State to protect your data and ensure that your sensitive data is protected. I'm also working on a bill right now that makes it very, very clear that we are not the state of Arizona, and that any recounts will never ever be contracted out to another entity, and must be in full cooperation with our Secretary of State and elections offices. So I will make sure that, again, that what you saw it happen in this last election in Arizona would never happen in Washington State. Judiciary Committee, which I'm a member on. For the last several years, I've been the prime sponsor in the House on limiting the high-capacity magazines individual can possess. We came very close to passing that bill out of the House a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, we didn't get it across the finish line. I've been working with State Senator Mark Elias, who is the prime sponsor in the Senate, and the Senate right now has that bill in the Rules Committee, and we're hopefully to get that out, and then hopefully onto the House, which I will be the lead in doing, making sure that we are going to pass finally once and for all this crucial gun safety bill. And I'm also working on a bill, a bill a couple of years ago that I was a prime sponsor on, which banned ghost guns. There's some fixes that need to happen along the way, and one of my colleagues, Rep. Berry, is priming that bill. I'm happy to be the number 2 sponsor in that, and so we'll make sure that we continue to ensure that ghost guns are limited. I want to make sure I wrap things up to get to all of your questions. Of course, I'm also a member of the Transportation Committee. Unfortunately, last year we did not pass a transportation package, and so I've been working as part of a team with our transportation chair in the House on working with our state Senate colleagues to hopefully get a package passed here in 2022, and that's really critical for us here in Northeast Seattle. There were some great projects in that package, which we're hoping to finally get funded. About $6 million in improvements up on Aurora 99 to help our King County Metro lines, as well as improvements on 520. And we also saw in our package, 30% historic investment. 30% of the package was historic investments, actually, in our multimodal transportation. So things along that line. And a couple other quick bills is that one of my colleagues in the 43rd, Representative Macri, is working on a bill that would finally provide incentives for us to no longer to ensure that we're going to now have more electric lawnmowers and leaf blowers. I get a lot of emails on this. I'm happy to be the number 2 signer on that bill to help her get that passed. And I'm working on a bill that I've been trying for 4 years to get passed with DSHS, which provides more protection for our seniors out there. So in a nutshell, those are my priorities for 2022, and happy to get to all the questions that folks have for us.
Thank you so much. And if you do have a question, please type it in the comments on whatever platform you are using to watch this. And thank you for taking the time to participate in this. We are now going to go to our first question, which is from Benjamin, who asks, what is being done about preserving voting rights?
Yes, I'm happy to take that question. And thank you, Benjamin, for your question. You know, I think it's majorities matter. And majorities matter when it helps that at least that I'm the current chair of the state government committee, because I get to decide what bills get a hearing and what bills don't. And in 2021, there were a lot of bills that were introduced by some of my colleagues that would have really done a lot of damage to our voting rights and really put a lot of obstacles into having folks, just have their right to vote. We saw bills, of course, that would no longer allow for drop boxes. We saw bills that would no longer allow for our mail-in balloting, have folks go back to the polls. Well, you can guess how many of those bad bills got a hearing. Absolutely none. And so, part of my job as chair of the state government committee is to ensure that we are doing everything, again, that we can to protect our voting rights. I know that we are going to see again some more bills again, limiting the right to votes. Those bills will not get a hearing in 2022 either. But again, I can assure you that as long as and I continue to be chair of this committee, we will always make sure that everyone's vote is protected. If there was actually one big bill that we did pass in 2021 about preserving voting rights, it was a great bill by a freshman, brand new legislator, Tara Simmons. And that was a bill that finally ensured that for felons who were no longer incarcerated, once and for all, got the right back to vote as soon as they were no longer incarcerated. We've all seen, of course, and heard the stories of that their votes are limited, that they have to pay all their fines, but which really it's kind of a poll tax that here they are, they've served their time but not being able to vote. Well, we've ensured and removed all those stipulations, and I thought that was a very historic piece of legislation that we passed in last year.
I just would like to add, if I could, that I think the overall attack in the country on voting rights post 1/6, which we're now almost exactly, tomorrow will be 1/6. No, 2 days from now will be 1/6, are absolutely atrocious. And I will oppose every measure of that nature that comes before me in the Senate. I think it is so hypocritical for the legislators who have been elected under the mail-in voting system, many of them 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 times, to come out and suddenly say that our system in Washington State is either corrupt or subject to what's the word I'm looking for? Problems that make our results invalid. That is just patently false. I don't understand why they're doing it, other than they're just trying to placate Donald Trump. It's absurd. And so I'm opposed to it, and I will continue to be opposed to it. And in fact, I had a bill last year, and I was working with one of my colleagues in the Senate today, and we'll see if we can do something on it. But to ensure that people who threaten election workers, who are just doing their job, counting ballots or otherwise presiding over our elections in a nonpartisan way, if they threaten them, any of those things that we've seen in other states, then, I think we should be throwing the book at these people. That's what I think. Sorry, that was a little negative, but that's how I feel about it. It's atrocious what's happening. I'm leaving, so there's gonna be no holds barred. I'm just gonna let it rip.
Thank you so much for that question and that response from both of you. I'm going to go now to another question from Kay, who asks, "How can we reduce gun violence?"
Senator Frockt, I'm happy to start, or would you prefer to start?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you for the question. Well, we unfortunately, since the COVID pandemic, I mean, it's no secret that we've seen a rise in gun violence, not only here in our state, but of course, throughout the country. And I think, if you ask, polls suggest, and if you talk to our voters out there, gun violence continues to remain one of the top priorities that they are still waiting for our state legislature to address. Now, we've taken some small steps along the way, but I think the biggest step that we can take is to finally, again, which I talked about this very briefly in my opening comments, is to finally once and for all, ban and limit the amount of high capacity magazines that an individual can possess. We all know the stories of all the tragedies, whether it's in Aurora, Orlando, Las Vegas, you name it. These weapons are just there for one thing, that is to cause harm to people. I've been the lead in the House on this bill for the last 4 years. We came so close in 2019 to finally getting this on the House floor and out for a vote. I won't go into a long story here, but unfortunately, we weren't able to do so. And then in 2021, last year's session, I reintroduced the bill in the House. And there was another bill, a companion bill in the Senate, which is Senator Leah's bill. And so we made the decision to try the Senate first. And so that bill currently sits in the Senate Rules Committee. And we are very hopeful that the Senate Rules Committee can put that on the Senate floor and then send it over to the House. And then, of course, I will give it my absolute all to finally get this once and for all. It's been, I guess, my one bill that I wish I could say I have delivered on my promise to help with gun safety when I came to the legislature. So I'm still hoping that I can still get this finally, across the finish line in the House and of course over to our governor for a signature. So that is one big step that we can take on reducing gun violence. Senator Frockt?
Well, I just want to say I appreciate Representative Valdez's leadership on this, and we've been very supportive over the years. Certainly, I definitely think the high capacity magazine issue is one that we should be addressing, and I definitely support that. I just wanted to say that there's a number of things we should do on the other side of this, which is to work with the city of Seattle. I know that the new mayor is going to be having a task force to address this issue or work within his administration, and I know they're working on a number of policies to go out and work with communities to help create alternatives for young people who are getting involved in the kinds of activities that would lead to some of the gun violence problems that we've been seeing. I mean, it's a very bad situation. And the second thing that I'm going to be working on as well is to try to provide more mental health and behavioral health supports in a variety of ways to our young people, through schools, through access to care that they don't have. And there's a number of things we need to do to improve people's access to help, so that we can help them with anxiety, depression, and other problems that sometimes lead to both self-harm and harm in acting out towards others. So I think those are some of the things we should do.
If I can just say, I want to let people know we've worked together as a team, the three of us, for so incredibly closely. And it's to save time. We're not all jumping in and saying me too or whatever, because we work really closely on all of these issues. We support each other on them, and many legislators from other districts have come to Rep. Valdez and myself and said over and over again, and lobbyists have said how they wish that their delegation had a team where the senator worked with the representatives and vice versa so well. And there's just the work on behavioral health and guns are just two of the examples of this. Thank you, Senator Frockt.
Thank you all for those questions and those answers. If you are listening, this is a live virtual town hall with your local lawmakers in the 46th district. Ask a question by typing it in the comments, and we will take that question to the lawmakers. We have now a question from Glenda, who asks, do you support the wealth tax in House Bill 1406? And what are the chances that it could pass in some form? And do you support a state investment bank, and will you work to get it passed?
So the wealth tax referred to, and I'm co-sponsor of that legislation, HB 1406, is an effort to make our tax system more fair. We have the most regressive tax system in the United States. That means the poorest people amongst us pay the highest percentage of their income in state and local taxes, and the wealthiest people in this state pay far less than they would living anywhere else. We made a historic change in that with the capital gains tax, which the three of us worked hard for many years. And it will be coming into force, and it will generate real revenue for education, behavioral health. And it is an important step to finally say, if you are making millions of dollars from your stock gains, you should pay some tax in the state of Washington. And it is not the same as a wealth tax. It's an excise tax on investments being sold. But a wealth tax is an attempt to go back to where we were before this state started down the road towards disinvestment in education. And 22, 23 years ago, there was a company that was sitting on the biggest pile of cash in the history of the universe at the time, and it lobbied the legislature to do away with what was called the property tax on intangibles. In other words, on stocks and bonds. And it took away billions of dollars in revenue from the state. And the tax of 1% that's been proposed is a modest step towards that. I don't think it'll pass this session. I think that we'll be looking to see how well we do with capital gains tax. And I think that in the long haul, we need to reinstate a property tax on the investments of corporations and individuals that are worth billions and billions of dollars. And right now, if no matter what you generate in revenue, you don't even pay a penny in business tax. If you get that money, your revenue from investing in Wall Street instead of jobs on Main Street. And that's wrong.
Thank you so much for that question and that answer. We now have a live question from Linda on YouTube, who asks, as you mentioned, it's a short session. What is realistic to expect regarding climate change mitigation and GMA improvement? I work with FutureWise's Washington Can't Wait campaign, and this work is so urgent.
If Senator Frockt and Representative Valdez don't mind, I'll continue on this one. Thank you very much for working on the WA Can't Wait campaign. I love the name of it. WA is in Washington Can't Wait. And indeed, we can't wait on climate change. We have to keep taking the lead on that fight. We have to show the nation what can be done. And we made a tremendous stride with cap and trade program being adopted last year. But one of the things that I've been shepherding through as chair of the local government committee is to ensure that local governments, when we plan for housing and transportation, plan to reduce our climate impact. Is truly the definition of thinking globally and acting locally. And so I've been shepherding through HB 1099, which is the focus of the Walk Can't Wait campaign, to have that effect and to ensure that we fund our local governments to plan for how we reduce our climate impact at the local level. We've got to fund our local governments to do it and give them the tools. And for some of them, we have to mandate that they do it. So thank you for your work and your activism with the Walk Can't Wait campaign.
If you're listening, this is a live virtual town hall with your local lawmakers. To ask a question, just type it in whatever platform you're watching it on. We now have a question from Dennis, who asks, the Keep Our Care Act, which will help prevent additional damaging health system mergers, will be reintroduced in the Senate this session. Will you support this bill?
Thank you for the question. I am familiar with the bill and familiar with the whole issue, very familiar with the problems and challenges raised by with hospital mergers. We passed, just to let you know, a couple of bills, one important bill last year to ensure that merged hospital systems have to preserve access to all the full range of reproductive health care that women need. That was a very important one, and some other changes of that nature. I haven't made a final decision, Dennis, on the Keep Our Care Act. I need to look a little bit closer at it. I have met with a number of advocates about it. I'm not opposed to it. I just want to take a little bit, I'll be honest with you, I just haven't had a chance to really dive into it at the level I want to, but I definitely am open to it. And I am very concerned about the consolidation in the healthcare space that is affecting, I think, driving up the cost and price of healthcare, and also in some instances impacting the quality. There are some times where there are mergers that are warranted, where you've got a failing hospital system, particularly in rural areas, where it might be necessary, but there are other problems that it creates. So I will look at that closely, and I appreciate you being aware of it and bringing it to my attention.
Thank you so much. We now have a question from Carolyn, who asks, I would like to hear what, if any, criminal justice reform policies you are hoping to address this session.
I don't know who wants to go first. We're all deeply engaged in this.
Well, I think what I can say, here's what I can say, Carolyn. We have done an enormous amount of work in the last several years, in particular, a whole slate of policing reforms last year that made, in my opinion, many that were quite necessary, and I voted for all of them. There are potentially some adjustments and tweaks that are being considered, and I think those will be, the subject of a serious debate. So I don't know of anything off the top of my head that I'm sensing is going to be very prominent this year, but I'm certainly open to continuing the progress we've made on criminal justice reform. And if you have something in particular that you want us to take a look at, or a bill that comes up, feel free to send it to me, and I'm sure I can speak to that for my colleagues as well.
Let me jump in on this. Last year, and Senator Frockt and Rep. Valdez were deeply involved in this. All of us were. As Senator Frockt said, we made incredible sea change in terms of police accountability and racial justice in policing. And one of the key things we did was to say, police need to de-escalate, and we need to step back and not use armed responders when you can respond, especially to a mental health crisis or other problem that does not require an armed response. And I've supervised students doing research on this, that if instead of an armed responder, you have a crisis responder respond to someone in behavioral health crisis, their outcomes are universally better. If it is someone who is a crisis responder who brings them to the emergency room, their outcomes are always better. And of course, the risk of being shot doesn't exist. At the same time, we recognize that it is important for crisis responders to be able to have police go with them to a behavioral health crisis in the event they are needed. And this is an example of the right wing creating a false tale. After the session, all of a sudden they said, now we as police, we can't respond to anything because we're not allowed to under this awful law that was passed. They didn't have that analysis during session when we worked with the Association of Police Chiefs and Sheriffs and others. Nope, only afterwards did the right wing say, we're not going to respond to calls for help. And I really think that it's a shame. I have a brother who is a police officer who would never have said, I'm not responding to a call for help from someone in behavioral health crisis because of political message. And it's a shame. And we're going to do some adjustment on this to make it perfectly clear what we're talking about. But this is an important reform that we can't reverse. We have to keep with it. It saves lives, and it's the right thing, and it's the just thing.
Thank you for that question and that answer. If you are listening or watching, this is a live virtual town hall with your local lawmakers. Type a comment and in whatever platform you're watching to ask a question. We have a live question now from Miriam on YouTube. She says, can you update us on the support for childcare in this state impacting the ability of citizens to work with quality care? The child care tax credit has gone away now. Will Washington step up on this?
Well, first off, I think the three of us would say that it is vitally important for Congress to step up and follow the president's request to continue the child care tax credit. It has, in the height of the pandemic, it has dramatically reduced childhood poverty and hunger in the United States, and it has to be reinstated. In our state, we have a child care crisis and desert and numerous things we're working on to try to invest in child care. One of the things that we're just getting underway is enabling students at our community colleges to have child care while going to school. Senator Frockt?
Yeah, let me jump in on this. One of the things we're going to try to do is continue our investment in more childcare facilities. We have a new what we call childcare and early learning grant fund in the capital budget, which has put in tens of millions of dollars to help partner with local communities. Some of those are being built here in Seattle. That's vitally important. We also passed the Working Families Tax Credit, which is not a child tax credit, but for lower income people is going to help with rebate some of the sales tax and so forth that they end up paying. So that should help as well. So there are a number of things we need to do. But I'd say the biggest thing that we did is that the capital gains tax that was passed, in all of the debate over the capital gains and whether, is it an income tax, is it not an income tax, and the litigation and the constitutional question that is currently pending. And I would say for those who are interested in that, I think we'll get a ruling at some point in the capital gains litigation that's taking place in Eastern Washington. It's going to go to the state Supreme Court, and they're ultimately going to have the final say on this. But having said all that, what people have not talked about is the fact that the program itself is linked to our expansion, a dramatic expansion of child care access in the state in a number of ways, both standing up the child care delivery system with better supports for those who provide child care, as well as direct supports in making more people eligible for state subsidies and state assistance to pay for child care. That's all linked to the capital gains tax that we passed. That's what it's paying for. And so it's really important for us to continue this work. And I know it's on the minds of many people. So thank you, Miriam, for bringing that up. And hopefully the feds will come through with the bill to reinstate the child care tax credit.
Thank you so much for that question and those answers. We now have a live question on Facebook from Leon, who asks, as a carpenters union member, will the federal infrastructure bill help the state transportation package for 2022 and prevailing wage union work?
Be happy to take that on. Is that okay? Great. Thank you, Leon, for your question. And the answer is yes. The federal infrastructure bill will definitely help with some of our funding needs here in our transportation package. When the COVID pandemic hit, it took a real blow to our transportation funding. We saw an enormous loss in our gas tax revenue, an enormous loss in our ferry revenue. Those are just two examples. It's going to take us a long time to recover from that. And again, it was unfortunate last year that we were not able, for the first time in quite some time, to pass a transportation package, which would have funded many projects going forward. That being said, what will help though with this transportation with the federal infrastructure funding is that it will help at least stop some of that gap that we are going to have in future because of the loss of revenue. Some of the big things we still have to work on, which again this funding will help, is that first is our culverts. We're under a court mandate to fix about over 900 culverts to ensure that our fish and salmon can pass through safely. It's going to take an enormous amount of state funding to ensure that we meet this mandate. So the federal funding will help, but we also can utilize this funding from the feds again to help us in further investments where I think a lot of folks, not only in the 46 and throughout our region, but throughout our state, are continuing to ask for more investments in multimodal, but also, of course, when it comes to green technology, they want us to see us do more investments, ensuring that we are getting off gasoline cars and moving to electric cars. We know we still have a huge need for electric charging stations in order to meet that demand. So it will help. And I said I'm hopeful that. We do have in the Senate side a new transportation chair, and I'm hopeful that with that new leadership, the House team and the Senate team can come to an agreement on a package. This way, we can fully utilize all those federal funds that'll be coming our way. And of course, in terms of the prevailing wage, of course, any federal funding on any project that has federal funding must ensure that all of our workers on those jobs and our subcontractors, they must be paid a prevailing wage. Myself, as a proud member of AFSCME Council to the county and city employees, I'm definitely ensuring that, of course, that our union women and men and brothers and sisters out there are fully supported in those jobs.
Thank you so much for that question and that answer. We now have a question that's related to construction. It's from YouTube. Emily asks, would you consider funding seismic retrofits for school buildings to save children's lives and allow buildings to serve as shelters after the big one?
Well, Emily, I just want you to know I saw your question in our little private, and I was lobbying quietly to have a chance to answer your question. So thank you for bringing that up. So the issue of seismic retrofits, it's gotten some attention in the press recently, and there's also some concern about how we fund overall school construction. But here's what I can tell you. We are looking really closely at this, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to continue our investment. We put tens of, not a lot of money, not as much as we probably should have, into some of the retrofits that are being requested. There was a major study that was done that prioritized all the schools, particularly in the earthquake zones that are mostly in Western Washington on the coast, typically, or most at risk. And I can tell you, it's literally tens and tens and tens and maybe up to billions of dollars. It's a real huge expenditure outlay. And part of the problem is in in laying out some of the money, it's hard for whatever reason. OSPI and the entities that have to implement have not been able to spend out even what we've allocated already, so that we've got to get on top of this. So the answer to your question is we're working on it. I don't know that, I just want you to know that we're not ignoring the problem. And one of the things that we're looking at that I'll be introducing here shortly is legislation that for those communities in a high impact zone, potentially, number one, that they can get additional assistance under the state school construction formula, which will provide additional money for them. But secondly, that they would have a lower threshold for passing local bonds as well, so that there can be a state and local partnership. That's an option. That doesn't solve all of the problems. And the problem, candidly, is that some communities won't pass any bonds for local school construction. That's another problem. So we're working on it. There's kind of a multitude of angles that we've got to come at it at. But thank you for bringing it up. It's an important issue.
And I want to add to that. We've worked together on this issue, trying to lead in the House and Senate on school construction and earthquake and tsunami readiness, as well as Senator Frockt has done great work on funding the lack of school capacity here in Seattle. Representatives Liz Berry and Noel Frame from the neighboring 36th and I have been working on a proposal to basically say it's really important that when we retrofit a school, we include the seismic modernization for it. And the report that was mentioned talks about how that would save significant funding to, I mean, if you think about it, of course it does. If you're retrofitting a school, adding, whether it's new roofing or you're adding classroom space or a gym, do the seismic upgrade at the same time. It'll save a lot of money and it saves lives. And one of the sad things is that, as you pointed out, Emily, in the question, that we need our schools to be functional after the earthquake. And this is not just about the fact that we need to retrofit them to save the lives of our children, but you need the schools to be functional. And it's worth the investment. And the state needs, I think the state needs to be paying for it. It's basic education. Going to school and living through the earthquake is basic education. State, it's our constitutional duty.
Thank you for that question and those answers. We now have something from Melissa, who asks, Governor Inslee did not include a COLA for educators in his budget in spite of the high rate of inflation right now, which will leave teachers behind on earning a living wage. What are you doing to correct this oversight?
I'll jump in and just say I expect that there'll be a true major push for it. You know, we've got a tremendous shortage of educators right now. Today at a hearing I was chairing for the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee, we were talking about the healthcare program for our educators and the fact that many substitutes, we don't have enough substitutes, and we've left many of them behind in terms of not providing healthcare. And when it comes to our school system right now and funding, there are some tremendous challenges, and school districts are want to provide a cost of living increase. They can't do it out of levy funds because they're out of levy funds, in part because the state isn't paying the full cost of special education. Here in Seattle, we're over $40 million in the red because of lack of funding for special ed, which we're trying to change. Take, a lot of resistance to fully funding education still. And that includes, sadly, people saying, well, why should educators get a cost of living increase? Well, because we don't have enough educators and they can't afford to stay in their jobs. And right now, let me just say for the educators on here, thank you, thank you, thank you. We know that you are working so many extra efforts right now to do the swabs and testing and contact tracing and everything else. while trying to help our students recover from a year of learning loss.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Pollet, you couldn't have said it any better. And I want to echo your comments. I mean, we can never say thank you enough to our public educators who are out there doing the hard work, ensuring that our future generations out there, have the right, have what it takes, once they're ready to get out of the school system. I know that, I've talked about this before in some of my other conversations that, I'm a product of public education. I'm a first generation from Eastern Washington, first generation kid from Eastern Washington. And I would not, be in this place where I am right now today if it was not for our public education. And I can never say thank you enough to all of our teachers out there who helped me, get along the way. I think all of us here have always been supportive of every request to ensure that our teachers are paid what they need to be paid. So it's not easy work. But I also want to say this also applies to our retired teachers, because every year I meet with the retired teachers, and all they want again is to ensure that they have an automatic COLA. And it's a struggle. I must admit it that it's a struggle. I don't understand why we are not able to ensure, even for our retired teachers out there, that we cannot provide them an annual cost of living increase in their retirement checks, so they can make sure that they're are being able to retire and pay their own bills, and live comfortably. That's the least we can do for all the work that they have done and their sacrifices. So great question, Melissa.
Thank you again for taking part in this 46th District Virtual Town Hall. We have time for a couple more questions before closing remarks. Now we have a question from Andy, who asks, homelessness is a statewide issue. When will state government take the lead on dealing with this?
Senator Frockt, you
Well, I was just going to say, I appreciate the question. I think it's a partnership between state. In my opinion, we have a good working partnership with state government and local government to solve our challenges in this space on housing, on behavioral health, in a number of ways. And what I want you to know is that I truly believe this. In the last 3 or 4 years, the state at the state level, we have committed more resources than the amount of money in my time, I'm sure, combined up to that in the legislature. We passed reforms to our document recording fee to put more money into housing vouchers and permanent supportive housing. That was something I worked on directly. We put billions of dollars into $1 billion into rental assistance and other supports from the federal money that we have. And just this year, Governor Inslee proposed another $500 million, $500 million for additional affordable and rapid housing, which is something I've been working on the capital side in his proposed budget. And I think there's a lot of momentum behind that proposal. So I think are really taking it seriously. There's a lot of support for providing the help that local governments need. But we also need, candidly, I think we need local governments to do a better job as well. It's going to be an all hands on deck challenge. It's multifaceted problem, and we have to work together and in concert. And I think we've been trying to do that, and I think we'll continue to do that.
Let me join in here and again say this is something Senator Frockt has provided incredible leadership on, and he was responsible for making sure that our state made an investment in rapid housing this past session, and for the Housing Trust Fund having more money than ever before. Senator Frockt, how much did we put in the housing?
Well, all told, last session we put in, I believe it was $375 million in that, and then the housing trust fund's been at record levels the last couple of cycles. But I mean, the need is huge, and so I don't claim that that's everything that needs to be done. But we've also given a lot of tools at the local level for local governments to raise additional funds to invest as well. So, like I said, there's a lot of angles to this problem that we have to solve together.
And as chair of the local government committee, I can say, while I'm a fierce advocate for our local governments, there are some that really failed to step up to do what they need to do here. And there are many that don't use the funding resources that we've provided them. And they ask for everyone else but themselves to be the providers of either affordable housing or shelters. We had a significant fight this past year in saying, if you've got hotel space and we can use it for shelters during COVID, you can't say it's okay for wealthy people to stay in the hotel, but not people who need a shelter tonight. So we've got a lot more work to do. Not every local government has stepped up and made the type of investment that's necessary.
Thank you so much. We have one last question that's live from YouTube. Daria asks, what is being done to get individuals with behavioral health challenges into meaningful treatment and off the streets into long-term housing?
Senator Frockt, do you want to talk about?
Well, I think it's many things, Daria, that we just kind of spoke about. I mean, we've got to invest in permanent supportive housing. I think we're continuing to do that. I think you'll see some legislation coming out of the Behavioral Health Committee to provide better outpatient treatment options for persons with behavioral health disorders. It's very hard if they don't have access to services right there. You can say, okay, to this person who's challenged and is on the street or what have you, show up in a week to go see this provider. I mean, that's not going to happen. So we've got to, I think, change our approach directly. But it's a huge problem. We probably don't have enough time to go into it in more detail than that. But permanent supportive housing, so housing with supports, and then on the ground outreach, it seems to me, are the keys.
And investing in the reimbursement rate so that you can keep staff.
Huge issue. Yeah, we'll be working on the reimbursement. Yeah, exactly.
I think, are we out of time and need to wrap up? There are a lot of great questions here. If you're emailing us, we'll be able to respond more. People can join me on drop-in, but shall we? Senator
Yes,
Frockt,
please.
wrap us up?
We have about 5 minutes left, so if folks could start closing remarks, starting with the senator, and if you haven't had a chance to get your question answered, please get in touch with your lawmaker's office. We will have contact info at the end. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try, instead of closing remarks, I'm going to try to just answer a couple of these questions that were submitted. Will we be demanding reimbursement for tax dollars for the reps who went to the MyPillow symposium? I would say yes. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's absurd. So I'm hopeful that the House, but I just want to point out to my friends, Gerry and Javier, that those were House members, senators who went. Okay, next one. Ranked choice voting for Washington. I'm open to local options. Ranked choice at local levels. It's a growing trend. We've seen it in New York. We've seen it in many other states. I'm definitely open to it. I think there'll be some momentum, I hope.
Can I add that real quick on that one?
Yeah.
So the ranked choice voting bill did pass out of the state government committee last year. I did vote in favor of that. It did get out of the House rules, but did not get on the floor. So I know I've had conversations with the prime sponsor, Rep. Harris Talley, and we're hopeful that we can get it on the House floor onto a vote and then over to the Senate.
All right. So I was trying to get through a few more of the questions. I'll just say thank you again for attending. We appreciate it. Please keep sending us your emails about what you're interested in, and I will certainly be looking at them as I do throughout the session.
Representative I see a note about staffing. Representative Valdez and I had longtime staff people who moved on to terrific new opportunities. We both have terrific new legislative aides. So we're busy scheduling. We're getting about 50 scheduling requests a day right now for the session. That's another reason why I encourage people to join me on a Saturday morning. Representative Valdez, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I want to say to everyone, thank you tonight. Please, great questions. Obviously we couldn't get to every single one, but feel free to reach out to us. As Representative Pollet did say, I mean, he and I are both transitioned to new staff, so be a little patient with us if we're not as responsive as we have been in the past. So, we're onboarding our new staff, but hopefully they'll get up to speed quickly. I would like to say to all of you again, if you're new to the 46th district, welcome. We're so happy to have you. And to Senator Frockt, I know this is your last pre-session town hall, and it's been an honor to work with you, and we look forward to continuing that work at least for one more year.
So with that, let's close by saying, please, please, please get your booster shot if you haven't. Have your children vaccinated. Work with the school district to make sure they're doing vaccination as well as testing. And don't go into large group parties indoors. Please stay safe and healthy. That's what we can do. And it's up to all of us to do our part in fighting COVID right now. All right.
Thank you so much to everyone who participated and to the 3 lawmakers who took all your questions. That is all the time we have. Please have a great evening.